What you're about to hear might be the most important warning of our time, and the most chilling part comes at the very end. The world stands on the brink of a catastrophe unlike anything seen since 1945. Global tensions are rising, and for NATO, the possibility of a two-front war is no longer a distant scenario. It's a rapidly approaching threat. While Russia remains the most immediate and volatile adversary, the alliance is also keeping close watch on China, whose military buildup is unprecedented in both scale and ambition. According to General Alexis Grinkevich, NATO's newly appointed Supreme Allied Commander Europe and head of the United States European Command, this dual threat could become reality as soon as 2027. At a high-level conference in Wiesbaden, Germany, Grinkevich issued a stark warning. NATO must prepare for the very real possibility that Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping will coordinate simultaneous military strikes, Russia pushing into Europe and China invading Taiwan. Grinkevich speculated that before Xi moves on Taiwan, he might call Putin, asking him to launch a diversionary assault, perhaps on a Baltic state or Finland, designed to stretch NATO to its limits. Such a coordinated move, he said, would demand every missile, every tank, every aircraft, and every ounce of NATO's preparedness. Time is short. Grinkevich estimates that NATO has less than 2 years to prepare, and right now, the best defense lies in helping Ukraine continue to resist. Every Russian tank destroyed, every missile intercepted, every battalion pinned down helps keep Moscow's forces from threatening NATO borders. That's why support for Ukraine remains essential. To strengthen Ukraine's air defense, NATO is rushing more Patriot systems into the country. Grinkevich declined to reveal specifics, but confirmed that preparations are well underway. He's also preparing to meet with allied military leaders to discuss expanded assistance, especially advanced interceptors to counter Russia's relentless missile and drone attacks. June alone saw over 5,000 drone assaults launched by Russia, illustrating the sheer scale of the Kremlin's air campaign. And while Ukraine's growing arsenal of AI-powered air defenses, like the Sky Sentinel, has proven effective, Russia is adapting by deploying decoy drones to drain Ukraine's resources before launching actual strikes. The result? A devastating surge in civilian casualties. Ukraine desperately needs more systems, more munitions, more support. At the recent U.S. Army Land Euro Symposium, Grinkevich stood alongside General Christopher Donahue, commander of U.S. Army Europe and Africa. Together, they called for closer integration between NATO militaries and defense industries, emphasizing speed, coordination, and innovation to match the accelerating threat landscape. Crucially, they warned against seeing Russia and China as isolated threats. Instead, they urged NATO to view them as part of a unified axis, working to destabilize global security. That's why NATO must act now, because both adversaries are already aligning their political, economic, and military strategies. Despite only taking command on July 4th, Grinkevich is wasting no time. One of his top priorities is pushing NATO members to raise their defense spending to 5% of GDP. Some, like Poland and the Baltic nations, are leading the way. Others, such as Italy and Spain, are lagging far behind. Grinkevich will be monitoring this closely, pressing for accountability and urgency. Meanwhile, Russia and China continue to deepen their cooperation. Since the invasion of Ukraine, Beijing has doubled its trade with Moscow to over $245 billion, counteracting the West's sanctions and propping up the Russian economy. This economic bond has only strengthened the political alliance between Putin and Xi. Both men share a hunger for expansion. Putin has openly declared that Ukraine belongs to Russia. Xi, similarly, sees Taiwan as a breakaway province that must be reunified. Their ideologies, their ambitions, their timing, they all point toward a coordinated global challenge to the West. And NATO knows it. German officials reportedly fear a Russian strike on a Baltic state by 2027, timed before countries like Germany and France are fully militarized. General Mark Rutte of NATO echoed these fears, highlighting how Russia is now producing 3 times more ammunition in 3 months than all of NATO does in a year. And that's despite Russia's economy being the size of Texas. He emphasized how Russia is already coordinating with China, North Korea, and Iran in its war on Ukraine, and how the Atlantic and Pacific theaters are becoming increasingly intertwined. If Xi does attack Taiwan, Rutte said, he will likely first call Putin and ask him to distract NATO with an assault in Europe. To prevent that nightmare, NATO must achieve 2 things: build overwhelming deterrence across the alliance and strengthen its partnerships with Indo-Pacific powers like Australia and Japan. Former President Trump has also championed this Pacific partnership, pushing for joint innovation between the West's industrial and military sectors. Because if Russia attacked Estonia today, NATO's response would be instant and devastating. Article 5 guarantees collective retaliation, with over 800 F-35s, NATO's full naval and land forces, and US reinforcements arriving fast. That's why Putin hesitates. For now. But what if he didn't? What if Russian troops surged into Estonia and mere days later, Chinese warships encircled Taiwan? Suddenly, NATO and its allies would be forced to fight two enormous wars on opposite sides of the planet simultaneously. Europe and Asia would both be engulfed in conflict, Western forces would be stretched thin, decision-making would be chaotic, priorities would clash. This divide-and-conquer scenario is exactly what Putin and Xi might be counting on, and that would be the moment of maximum danger. Both nations have rebuilt their forces to prepare for that strike. Russia has suffered horrific losses in Ukraine, thousands of tanks, over 1 million casualties, but is churning out new drones, tanks and artillery at breakneck speed. China, meanwhile, boasts the largest navy in the world with more than 370 warships, massive land forces, and over 3,300 aircraft. Together, they would form the most powerful military bloc since the Axis powers of World War II, and both hold nuclear arsenals capable of wiping out cities. If they strike now, before NATO completes its rearmament, they may believe they can win. NATO knows this and is racing against the clock. Defense spending is climbing, forces are mobilizing, strategic planning is underway. But much depends on timing, coordination, and willpower. The fate of global peace might depend on whether NATO can prepare fast enough and strike back even harder.